Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another HORRORific chat. In this segment, we talk to various creators to discuss their current projects, motivations, inspirations, and journey into horror. Tonight, I'm joined by Reid, Jaron, and Snails from Action Fiction, developers for board and TTRPG games. James, flip's sake, I can nearly speak. That's a good start in the professionals always. Evening, folks, how are you?
Not too bad. How's it going?
I always have the flip. I love going live. It's great.
Your opening segment is so I always love seeing like what people do for their opening segments, and man, I thoroughly enjoyed that. That was fantastic.
I try to keep it a bit old school. I'm a fan of 80s horror, and the sort of Ghost Train vibe.
Yep,
I kind of love that type of stuff.
It was reminiscent of like the old school Twilight Zone intro as well, where it's just like all that things happening on the screen. You know, I love that.
Yeah, that's what I do. I love that kind of vibe, and people have slagged me off saying it's very cartoony. I'm like, so
it's campy, you know, it's delightful that way.
I like it, but I think there's like some people in horror that can take it a wee bit too seriously, and some podcasts have like a 10-minute intro, and they squeeze every horror movie trope and music's playing. It goes, and like, is the show going to start yet?
This is the show.
I'm going through this. But hey, everyone to their own, you know what I mean? That's other guys do it very well. I've seen some of the funniest ones as really slick, like animated intros.
Mm-hmm.
And then it comes to this part and it's all like
oh yeah, like it's a complete change in quality.
And you're just like, how the hell did that happen?
Am I still in the same show?
So just try and go as always. I just say I don't care about that's professionalism stuff. I've heard about it. I heard it helps you somehow, but nah, that sounds like hard work.
Well, we require suits at our job, so we're
is it that sort of environment?
Yep.
Yes, on the sit the keyboard properly and yes, type away and use correct throws at all times. Yeah. That's I'll be the first role playing game developers I've ever seen. Yeah, definitely can. Yeah, just because you're the master of he uses like cutscenes from video games and stuff, and like like dark and creepy haunted house type stuff.
Sure, yeah, I love
brilliant.
That.
Some of his intros actually he's been doing for other channels because Phil made one for his, and then everyone's like, "Oh, can you make one for me?" And then he's stuck flipping making like about 20 intros. That's what you get for being good at stuff. At least I'm okay. Nobody annoys me. But anyway, we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about you guys. So, Action Fiction, what's it all about?
Yeah, so this is Action Fiction.
Snails, you're on mute, by the way, just in case you.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, gotcha.
Action Fiction's me and Snails. Reid is Fable Factory, and so we're kind of teaming up to make Cthulhu Dreamt, which is real exciting. I will not steal Reid's thunder. I'll let him cover Fable Factory stuff. But Action Fiction.
My apologies. I did not realize.
No, that's okay.
Right. Okay. So we'll make.
No, you're totally fine. Yeah, it's a very cool partnership.
So we'll start off with Action Fiction, then we'll talk about Fable Factory.
Hell yeah, that sounds great. So Action Fiction, Snails and I have been working together with kind of a small team of folks from all over for a couple of years now. We were making Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition content. For years, we were supporting this campaign setting that we were running called Monsters of Merca. It's how we kind of all got together. It's like a high fantasy parody of United States pop culture, but with magic and monsters. It's all kinds of fun. And Cthulhu Dreamt is kind of our first chance to do something that's not in that world. You know, we've been working in that world for like 3 or 4 years. And this is the first time that we're getting to go beyond that, do something else, the very different vibe. You know, Merc is very fun and silly. And now we're going to get to do something that's scary and horror and not dreadfully serious, but pretty serious. We get to tell a story that's a little meaningful.
I don't think people understand though. Levity, you can have horror and scariness, but you need those moments of levity. That's what builds it up. I've reviewed umpteen number of films where they've went too far down the serious trope, and the scary music every beat, you know, bum bum bum, and you just switch off. You just zone out completely because the brain can only process so much.
Yeah,
and one thing about the horror genre is so wonderful about it is it knows a good horror story has those beats of levity. And sometimes it's just something completely daft, but it just breaks the tension and then builds you up for the next scare.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it feels more real that way. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it feels more real that way as well. Like, because when, in real life, when something kind of, scary is happening, like, I'm the first who's going to crack jokes to try to, like, get through it.
Humor, it's the earliest form of coping mechanism.
Yeah. Snails designs a lot of the creatures for Cthulhu Dreamt, and I can't tell you, and some scenario stuff, and I can't tell you how many times we're sitting at the writing table, and even though we're making something scary, I mean, it's just jokes are flying constantly. And they've designed some very, very cool creatures that are meant to be the levity in the world. Like we've got some creatures that are not horrifying. They're still eldritch. They're still weird, but they're also like just kind of enjoyable, which is really nice.
So is this for you coming to the whole project, Snails? How did you get involved?
Yeah, so I was working with Jaren on Merca for a couple of years, and he started talking to me about Cthulhu Dreamt as like this project between him and Reed had worked with us before as like a composer for our Kickstarters, and I thought he was a cool dude, and so I came in and we needed somebody to do like monster design and like kind of like do some of the initial work, figuring out what Cthulhu Dreamt would look like, and that's kind of where I came in. So mostly what I do is think of terrible, terrible things that people would not want to encounter in a dark, scary night, and make very, very childish jokes in the writer's room.
All flat. So I think you got, were you inspired by the Call of Cthulhu game or more Lovecraft and just want to take it that direction? What's your sort of history with RPG? In fact, who wants to explain what an RPG is for, and not the RPG, but a TTRPG, to maybe people that haven't encountered them before?
Take it away, Snails.
What you want me to explain what an RPG is?
So
go for it.
Role-playing game for those that are down with the terminology.
Yeah, no, it's a tabletop role-playing game, and you just sit around with friends at a table and you roll dice. You have a rule set that you follow, just like a board game, and you do your best to follow the rules of the game. And it's a lot of improv, a lot of pretending. In our case, it's a lot of just trying to have your character survive situations, and you just play. It's at its core, it's just make believe, right? Like that's all a TTRPG is make believe with some rules everybody agrees on. Where I drew inspiration, we wanted to stay away from a lot of the classic tropes. Like we obviously like Cthulhu. There's a whole mythos and like a lot of authors who've kind of gone in and made it their own, and done a lot of really cool work. But we wanted to really bring our own spin. So we wanted to try and stay away from like Call of Cthulhu and Lovecraft's original stuff. So you'll not see a lot of like you won't see a lot of Shoggoth type stuff necessarily in our in our game. We drew inspiration a lot more from like the natural world. We have a whole file for our artists that's just like creepy shit that you can find that actually exists in the real world, and some of it is deep sea stuff like you'll see in Call of Cthulhu, but some of it's like viruses and like just gross insects. And that's where we try to bring a lot of inspiration. Me personally, when I try and take the creatures and take them from that kind of like most of an idea to actually like really terrifying, I try and find inspiration in something that is not necessarily like what we would typically think of as scary. So like just everyday situations that when you take it to the 11th level, like to turn it to 11, it's now scary. So like, because we've all felt out of control before. We have like a monster called the Brainchild, and I really wanted to take that feeling of like not being in control of your life and just because of things that are happening to you, and I turned that up to 11, and we have the Brainchild, which is like it's like a parasite that goes into like a host, and it slowly eats their brain from the inside out, but it leaves all of the bits that are you aware and like awake for as long as possible. and so you're watching yourself kind of move around and do things that you're not in control of. It's a little messed up, but that's where the type of stuff I try and draw inspiration from.
It's funny though, because on this, usually the first gaming folks that I've had on the channel, by the way. So thanks very much. This is the first. I've talked to all sorts of horror creators, movies, books, merchandise, crafts, you name it. So it's good to actually get what might be different from a gaming perspective, but I'm seeing the vibes are still the same. Horror creators are just bonkers mad, love it. Yet for some reason, it's that delving into the dark makes us happier people. You know what I mean? There's like a catharsis about it. Do you find that? That just going for the, okay, I'm going to delve into here because I've explored it there, so what can I see in real life that would be worse?
Yeah. Well, like really kind of getting down to brass tacks, the entire project of Cthulhu Dreamt is like, it's based on an experience that my wife and I went through, which is having lost a child in childbirth. And so it was like, I wanted to do something that kind of would encapsulate all of those things that I felt, all of which were out of my control. And, what better kind of representation of like depression and loss and grief than like a Cthulhu, which is inconceivable and or supposed to be inconceivable, and use that as kind of the basis for this story. Where we're doing our best to survive through all of these trials and tribulations, and so like, how do you do that, and
well, obviously, it goes out saying, obviously, tragedy. Sorry to hear that you had to go through that. But is it important to find an outlet, even if it's not necessarily creating a game? But does creativity help you cope with things? We see it a lot today. The people, they hit the first hurdle and they kind of just fall apart. How important is it to have that sort of coping mechanism? Maybe not do as extreme as creating an actual physical product and selling. Obviously that's where it went, but just that method of thinking through or putting it on the paper or something.
I mean, for me personally, it was very cathartic. I mean, the project started as a musical endeavor, so it was like me and some friends got together and created a metal band called Cthulhu Dreamt, and we wrote like songs that were kind of followed this made up story, that we built to kind of go through the process of grief and, losing somebody you love and wanting to get them back and all of these things. And I mean, there were times writing the lyrics and recording stuff in the studio that it was like tears, and it's like, it was very cathartic going through that and like thinking through the process. And I mean, for this child that I lost, there are songs that I can point to which are direct, basically love letters, to that, something I would never be able to tell them because of the loss. But, it exists there, and yeah, like the process for me was very, for me it worked, and it has worked, and luckily, like, I have a lot of friends who kind of joined me on the journey, who helped me get through a lot of those hurdles. So, I'm very grateful to be here and to have my friends here with me.
Yeah. And I think also that's, sorry to jump in, but for a lot of folks that play tabletop RPGs, it becomes sort of a vehicle for processing and exploring your own feelings. Like a lot of people that play TTRPGs, because it's a space where you're with friends and you're playing pretend, you're getting a little bit outside of yourself. People use it to explore feelings on grief and process things, explore their gender identities. Like it's a very cool, almost therapeutic tool in some instances, where you just have the ability to get outside of yourself and be in somebody else's shoes and then experience emotions through some shared mutual lens, which is really why like making this RPG was such a natural next step, such a natural cool idea to merge with what Reed had already done with Cthulhu Dreamt. It was a very smooth transition from one into the other.
It's funny because we're seeing a lot of the sort of normie crowd trying to get involved with nerd culture. And I would argue we've always been ahead of the game in terms of actually looking inward and exploring stuff, because we've always been those awkward people. We all know that feeling, doesn't matter what it is. Yep, here. Trust me.
Right?
Not coming from been a nerd all my life. I've got quite a few punches in my head because of it, I know what it's all about, If it wasn't for just for what I was explaining how I got into it, I was like 19 or something, that helped me become an adult. Because I found people that understood. I didn't fit in with the crowd. I was an outsider. I thought that was my whole life was just going to be this wandering person that couldn't connect with anybody. And then I just, by chance, it was some mate's flatmate. That's what it was. His flatmate was playing Battlefield Gothic. I'm showing my age here, by the way. Sorry, but that was an expansion pack for Warhammer 40,000 based on spaceships. And I just go, oh, cool. And then he's like, yeah, I bought the start so you could play these, and he gave me the Chaos flights, and I went out like the next day and bought my own box set and then gave them the Imperial ones. Next thing I know, I had a full army, and then I was me straight in. Then you start meeting other people. Then you start hearing about other games. Then you become skint for the rest of your life.
Yep.
Broke. You're like, oh, right, I'm not buying anything this month. Oh, shiny. Doug. Oh, why am I eating noodles?
Right. Yeah, 40K is one of the most expensive gaming hobbies to get into, but it's so cool. I get it. I understand how that happens.
These are people make the argument, oh yeah, you only need a book and some dice. Flipping, when you get into role-playing games and you start getting into not just the core rule, but you start getting into the appendices and the creature manuals, and you've even done it because you've got a novel coming out alongside the main book. You know what I mean? So you have started already. It's like you've got the main shiny thing, and then there's another shiny thing you might want, and there's another, and before you know it, flipping you're these noodles taste really nice. This is what I'm getting all my sustenance from. Yeah. But it's worth it.
Oh my God. Well, it is. And I mean, it's like, it's I can only speak for myself, but I'm pretty sure that everybody on this chat kind of feels similarly. Our passion becomes this thing that is like, what all can we do? And it's really hard not to grab the next thing that'll just expand, what we're working on or, what we're playing or into. So we totally get it.
Yeah. Do you think are board games and TTRPGs, are they still considered a niche genre, or have the hobbies expanded beyond this now that more people have access to it, and especially with online facilities able to play? Is it still that sort of niche, or has it grown?
I think the answer to that question is twofold. I think there are aspects of the TTRPG and board game community that are still very niche. When you get out, once you start getting outside of games like Dungeons and Dragons and into more indie developers, you'll find that the community is still very niche, and it's still very kind of like how it was 10 years ago, although that is changing because of reasons. But it's starting to become a little bit more mainstream, but it's then the surface level of board games, I'd say, is more popular culture now. More people play Dungeons and Dragons now than have ever played in the past. So it is both. It is still niche.
I would say
pop culture.
Dungeons and Dragons is the transition point between a tabletop war game and starting to go into RPGs. I think that's and that's why it's easier, because maybe people aren't comfortable. We'll all agree you don't need to be a classical actor to take part in a role-playing game. You don't need to put on voices. You don't need to dress up. It's optional and it's there, but that's not what this is about. It's theater of the mind. That's what we're doing. We're just sitting around and using our imaginations, and as opposed to other games, you're not playing against each other. And I think a lot of people don't get that when maybe they first come in, that you actually have to work together or else the whole group fails.
Yeah.
And it's also, what are you referring, the person that runs a game, what's the title you give them for this system?
Facilitator.
The facilitator, right? So it's not players versus the facilitator.
Right.
They actually there's this strange thing as well where you're not trying to beat the person that runs the game, because if you do that, the thing falls apart. And are those concepts, do you think, a bit too much for folks that maybe aren't familiar with this?
I would say,
is it just so unusual?
It's not. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's not. It's just unusual. It's unfamiliar. And that's why like you list Dungeons and Dragons as a good transition, like a good kind of middle point for like war games into RPGs. It's not really the best. And funny enough, the Dungeons and Dragons is not the best at anything except being the most popular role-playing game. Like no matter what part of D&D you like, there's a system out there that takes it to the next level, that does a little better. D&D is just, it's the popular, it's kind of the in right now. And so for that, I'm very thankful, because it's introducing those concepts to players. It's introducing like the idea of where a TTRPG and a board game are similar, and then where they're very, very different. And that very, very cooperative nature of a tabletop role-playing game is one of the first hurdles. Some of the other very early game hurdles too are a lot of folks, when they've never played a role-playing game, the first thing they do when they get into a role-playing game is they just go sprinting for the boundary. It's a very natural inclination in all kinds of games, which is like, oh, you're telling me anything is possible. I want to see if that's really true. I'm going to fireball this random person, and I want to see what happens, right? And they're looking for those boundaries, and that's another one of those things where it's exciting to see people learn that. Sometimes those lessons are learned a little harder than others, and the earliest.
Well, usually it ends up, and your character's dead.
Yeah, right. Or like, all right, well, now you're in jail.
Like, especially anything Cthulhu, yes. Because what's different from people playing a Cthulhu game, and you can tell me if it's similar or not, but likes of D&D, likes of Vampire, likes of Werewolf, you're supernatural characters. You go up to level 50 gazillion, and you become like a super hero, and like nothing short of a nuclear missile can kill you.
Yep.
In Cthulhu-based games, you're a human character, and you remain a human character throughout. So a plank of wood to the back of the head can end you.
Yep.
As in real life.
Yeah, and that's a big part of what makes it a horror game too, right? Is you have to feel vulnerable, and it's hard to feel vulnerable if you can take on like a 2-ton missile, like you said, right? Like you need them to feel very small in comparison. Yeah,
do you think that's because obviously talking about people coming from the outside, I'm spitballing here, but I did have notes, but just getting it this way. We've talked about people coming from the outside and sort of explain the concept, but inside RPGs, people that maybe play other systems coming into a Cthulhu-esque or that sort of human-based one, is there a bit of a transition or a bit of have to readjust the gears of the brain to play these sort of games?
Yeah, I would say so. And a big part of it is exactly what you're talking about, which is like D&D and games similar to D&D. Ultimately, they're a power fantasy, right? They're the fantasy that you're fulfilling in D&D is the same fantasy that most people fulfill playing all kinds of video games, where you're just growing and amassing more power. It's a very easy place to like latch into from a game design perspective, and it runs the range from fantasy leveling up all the way to those idle cookie clicker games where you're just making the number bigger, right? Making the number bigger is an easy way for humans to latch onto things and go like, I like this, I'm having a good time. And there is a bit of a transition when you look at that as compared to something like Cthulhu Dreamt, where Cthulhu Dreamt it's a lot more narrative focused. It's a lot of mystery, and it's a little you're never going to feel immensely powerful, but that's because that's not the atmosphere that it's designed to cultivate. You don't watch a horror movie to feel triumphant. You watch a horror movie to feel scared. And very similar, playing Cthulhu Dreamt, like it doesn't play like a Marvel movie feels. It doesn't play like D&D feels, where you're super powerful and you're kicking a bunch of ass. It's very different. And that transition, I don't want to say it can be like hard, but it is something that we encourage in our book. We tell facilitators like, hey, have a conversation with your players and let them know what to expect out of this game. It's important to have that conversation, to set expectations so that people don't come in thinking that they're going to get a power fantasy, and then they're in the 10th session and they're like, why am I still getting my ass handed to me by this guy with a baseball bat? Like, why? When does this stop happening? Oh, it doesn't.
There was actually we were playing Highway of Blood recently, and I burned through 4 characters in a game.
Oh no!
So my own character bought it, and then somebody had to jump off. I was like, "That's okay. I'll play your character." 5 minutes later, they're dead. And then our character, NPC 1, they're dead. Right? Okay. And then our character.
Wow.
I think once you do that, though, you get that out of your system very quickly. You're like, all right, okay, right. And like I said, there's this current campaign, and we've been on it for about 10 weeks now. That I joined in actually the second book of this series. So the campaign had already been going on. I've joined in the second part, and we've been going on for a while. The character's still there, but one of the things I do is like something big gnarly with teeth. I'm like, run.
Well, and like, yeah, for Cthulhu Dreamt, like, you know, there's the main campaign, the main book, which, you know, you will create your character, and obviously the goal will be to make it to the end, right? So where I think some of those other itches kind of get scratched is the side story, the encounters that are also going to be part of the project. So, you know, I know Jaren will explain it better than me, but, you know, it's these side stories, these encounters come with pre-generated characters where it's really a way for us to be able to say, you know, there's the main campaign, which goes from A to Z, but there's still stuff going on in the world that is being affected by Cthulhu and his denizens. So let's go and check in on what's happening over here in the world. And, you know, there's a good chance that those pre-generated characters will not make it, you know? So, but yeah, it's, I think,
because that was one of the questions I actually wanted to ask was, obviously the whole point of Cthulhu from Lovecraft and me and Call of Cthulhu game is once Cthulhu awakens, that's it, game over. We're all done for. How have you managed to tweak that?
That's a fun question.
It's not the case, because that's all people's perception of it. It's because even it's the dreams of Cthulhu actually cause the madness in the world. That's from Lovecraft himself and the whole mythos, which personally I think just changed, you know, just brought something brand new to the horror genre. And it's still resonating today. You know, people are still that whole like Snail's Mind, the whole ethereal thing, and those creatures that spark of imagination just brings so much, and we haven't even plumbed the depths. But the constant's always been, if the great old one wakes up and decides to take a walk, we're all done. That's it. Game over. No come back. So what have you kind of done without obviously spoiling the plot?
Yeah, no, that's it's a tough question to answer, because the answer to that question is the last chapter of the book, right? But I'll address it in as best as I can. The players don't go toe to toe with Cthulhu. That doesn't happen, because you lose. You don't beat him. There is no winning. So all of the Cthulhu Dreamt story and all of the encounters have more to do with the human element of the story, of surviving that world for as long as possible, of operating out of Relay, right, which is of course the sunken city. For us now, it's risen. It's an island that has risen up out of the depths, so a little bit of Atlantis there as well. And the whole premise of the journey that players are on in Cthulhu Dreamt is, can we do something to save ourselves? And even in the finale, the answer that players wind up getting is it's not a binary and yes or no, right? The answer of can we save ourselves is not like yes or no. It's there's costs, there's sacrifices that need to be made. And so I think one of the cool things about it is that every table that plays through Cthulhu Dreamt is going to end the story with their own twist on that decision. We give a lot of tools for players to kind of make those decisions, and it's going to feel a little bit different at every table with how it turns out in the end. And of course, we're irresponsible creators, and so we're leaving breadcrumbs to do a second book someday, which is fun, and I can't help myself when we have to do that. But it's very, very cool the way it's going.
That's the difference, I think, when you create a universe as opposed to just a one shot. If you've created a universe, you put the seeds that, I can't go there right now, but maybe later on you need something to tether onto, because that's the worst thing is when people don't think of that, and then you get the slapped on sequel that has no no bearing or whatsoever to the first one.
Right.
Yeah, that's terrible, isn't it? Yeah, oh no. And I bet you're saying, oh no, because like, oh god, I'm going to be skint again. There's another month of noodles, right? Fine, so be it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so down to the practicalities, who wants to explain the D12 system and what it's about and how it's going to differ?
That's a good one. Snails, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I can take that one. So the our
sorry,
I just sorry. Let my
obviously one of the selling points obviously of Cthulhu Dreamt is you've created this new playing system using a D12 as opposed to a D100 or D20, which is traditional in most games. So I'm just interested as in how the mechanics are going to work and why you felt that.
So the way our system works is you don't have modifiers like you do in Dungeons and Dragons. Instead, you have a pool of points for different attributes that you might have. So attributes that like represent your strength and your cunning and like your vigilance, and you spend those points to affect the die roll. Anything that you want to accomplish in the game is done by the facilitator setting a target number that you need to roll on your D12 or higher, just like a DC in Dungeons and Dragons. And when you roll your D12 and you hit it, and you hit that number, great, you succeeded. And if you don't, you can choose to spend resources, this pool of points from your attributes, to increase the number on that die.
So sort of like luck points. Similar to luck points.
Similar to luck points. But the pool instead of luck is just like is what your narratively is what your character is doing. So we have like the strong attribute, and if you want to push a boulder and you roll too low and you spend those strong points to push the boulder, what is happening narratively is that your character is exerting their strength, they're exerting themselves. So our system is all about putting forth effort to change the outcome of the die roll. And what's neat about that is that you can spend those points, but if you spend too many of them too early on in the day and you start getting a bit later, you might not have enough to alter more important die rolls that happen later on. But likewise, if you save too many of them and you let too many bad things happen early, you might put yourself in a situation that no amount of spending points will get you out of, and there could be some negative consequences.
Oh, okay.
And all of that is complicated, I should say, by our journeying mechanic. In this system, there's a big emphasis on like the journey that these players are taking. So we have things like a weather system that facilitators can implement in. Things like setting up camp and like eating a hot meal will affect things like those target numbers and how hard it is to do things, or how many points you might recover at like the end of a day.
So is this going to be, it's the same principle as, I'm sorry for going back to Call of Cthulhu, but that's like the closest reference I can think of. Are you going to have like hard extreme successes, or are there rollable tables? This basically say this is the situation you're in.
We do have degrees of success. So
let's go back to the campfire, right? Okay, so the parties arrive at camp, want to get set up. How do we initiate the weather?
Jared, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I can take that.
Sorry, this is going to be a massive beard session, by the way, just in case because I'm starting to go full nerd, and then the chat's going nerd as well, so get ready for them too.
Oh yeah, I've been seeing the chat. I'm really excited. So you got
to be here for about 3 hours. Sorry, lads.
you go to set up camp, and there are different characters. Instead of where Dungeons and Dragons has classes, right? Cleric, paladin. We have specialties that give you certain focuses. It means your character is extra knowledgeable in these areas. So let's say, for example, one of your characters is a survivalist. That's one of the specialties we have. Well, they're really good at setting up camp. So the facilitator is going to look at the weather, look at the difficulty of the journey that we're on, which is all stuff that you decide before you start this journey. And they're going to say, all right, here's how hard it's going to be for you to set up camp tonight. You're going to need to find shelter, find food if you don't already find it, and everyone kind of gets to split up and do that. So the survivalist will say, oh, well, I'm going to set up tent, or the tent, right? The facilitator says, all right, here's how hard it's going to be. What materials do you have on you? Because a lot of what we do is also about managing your inventory. Your carrying capacity is, that survival aspect means you have such limited resources. So if you have a tent, great. If you don't have a tent,
you don't have the magic pack with a portal, but
no bag of holding in this one, right?
Everything
so if you have a tent to set up, great. That's going to make your life easier. If you don't, well, then you need to start describing like, okay, well, how am I going to figure out how to build a shelter? And you get to kind of enter into a dialogue with the facilitator saying like, what is around me that I can use to set up a shelter, and kind of deciding what the difficulty is as you go. Meanwhile, some other player, maybe we have another specialty called the tracker. The tracker is like, well, I'm going to go forage for food. It's one of the things they're particularly good at. So now the facilitator can engage in a dialogue and say, well, here's some of the wildlife, right? Let me consult the area. Here's the wildlife, the fungi, all kinds of things that are available in the area. Here's how hard it's going to be to gather up enough for everybody. And if you can't find enough for everybody, well, then, somebody is going to struggle from that, right? We don't have hit points the way Dungeons and Dragons does. We have something called stress, which is broken up into physical and mental stress. And if you don't get to eat enough, that's probably going to give you some physical and mental stress, right?
So is that kind of the modifier then? That's a negative modifier?
It becomes a modifier. So you have a limit. You can take stress up to your limit. Once you hit that limit, you'll start taking wounds, and the wounds are what modify. So, for example, in the adventure path that we're writing right now, one of the wounds that comes up is starved. It's exactly what we're talking about. If you have to skip a meal and you're on this really long journey, well, that's going to make it harder for you to focus. That's going to make it harder for you to, overcome physical challenges. So there comes a modifier to that particular wound. If you take too many wounds, that's where you start to risk, becoming incapacitated.
Yeah, because that's somebody put there. Yeah, so you get exhausted.
Yeah.
So that's back to the boulder question. That so you basically don't get the energy, so your character effectively drops. So the rest of the team have to carry them, which is what happens in life.
Yeah, our exhausted mechanic is also a little dynamic too. You can do something called overexerting yourself. So normally you roll.
That's the pushing the boulder analogy we were using earlier on.
Yep. If you roll to push that boulder, let's say the target number to move that boulder is an 8. Yep. If you roll a 7, well, you spend 1 point of strength and you exerted yourself. You really shoved that boulder. You rolled it. You're good. If you only rolled like a 3 or a 4 and you have a much bigger gap to close, you'll do something called overexerting yourself, which is where you'll spend a lot of points to get there, but that's going to cause you some stress, right? It's not free to push yourself beyond that limit, right? It costs you some resource management. So whereas
how does the facilitator keep track of this thing? Because that sounds like it's more on the facilitator then to decide.
Believe it or not, it sounds much more complicated than it is. A lot of what we've seen with Cthulhu Dreamt, all of the play tests that we've done and some of the live plays that we've seen, people say like, this system is so easy, I didn't even need to read all of the rules, right?
Maybe we'll get one on this channel, eh?
Yeah, hey, maybe. People say like the system is so intuitive, it's so transparent that my players didn't open the rule book at all. We just knew how to handle it. And that's a lot of what we're trying to go for. So even though it sounds complicated, I promise it's not. It's just a matter of always engaging in a dialogue with a facilitator. The facilitator says, hey, you really pushed yourself, you're going to take some stress. And then that stress calculation, it's already determined. It's on character sheets too. So characters can immediately know, well, if I want to succeed on this roll, this is how much it's going to cost me. This is the effect that it's going to have. They have it right in front of them. So there is no.
So that's what you're talking about. Everything has a cost. It's all about trading off.
Yes.
Yeah, that's why you're saying it's not a dichotomy. Yes or no. It's that's what we're doing. No, that sounds interesting because that you could spend an hour of a session at a campsite without actually embattling a creature.
Yeah.
If it's absolutely chucking it down and but people don't understand. That could be just as much fun. Where like traditional, let's talk about video game players with like pew pew pew, or D&D just running for the next encounter. That's where these sort of games are completely different. But it doesn't mean they're not fun. And if you've got a good vibe with a bunch of people and everyone's like laughing and oh god no, and the flipping lane tree collapses and then that's it's all back. That can be as much of an enjoyable session. I suppose just run up straight to the monster.
Yeah, we're leading into the idea that this is it's survival and horror, right?
So it's more. It's not. You're not investigators. This one. It's more survivalists.
You are investigators
world
and
sort of
survivalists.
survival game.
You get to do a little bit of both, right? So you're Cthulhu and all of the eldritch creatures are just as much a threat to you as the world itself, right? The creatures are as dangerous as the plant life, and that doesn't mean that the plant life is going to grab you and strangle you. Some of it will, but not all of it will, right? Sometimes it's just a matter of like you need to be able to roll high to know what's edible and what's not. And if you eat something that has some kind of horrific effect, you're going to need to overcome that effect. So danger is everywhere, and we make sure that it's written such that it's not like I'm going to age myself here with this one too, but it's not like the Oregon Trail where it's you roll poorly and then you die of dysentery, right? The danger and the drama is always interactive. There's always a discussion to have. There's always a chance to overcome it. It's always exciting, right? It's very rarely like just gambling to see how hurt you're getting, you know?
That makes sense. I'll throw in some questions here from the chat.
Sure,
Folks I haven't forgotten you folks. Just obviously, you know me, I don't like to interrupt when we've got a good flow going here. There's Dale. Making game takes a lot more people to make than a movie. Why is that?
That's such a fun question. Snails will be able to tell you what that was like when we did.
And I don't think she means like video games. I know they've got the entire departments and all.
Yeah.
And there is a lot in the movie business, but there's like a very small number of people can make a movie. One person can make a movie.
Sure.
Yeah. Snails,
but
we had
definitely board games and games like this. A lot of people have to be involved.
Yeah, we had 18 writers, wasn't it, on the second Merca book?
It was. It was just under 20 writers on the second Merca book.
Yeah, so 18 writers. That's not counting the artists, the editors, the layout folks. I think really all mediums are sort of like that when you get down to like production. I mean, if you've ever seen a movie in theaters and you wait after the movie's over, you look at the credits list, there's hundreds of people that make these things, the many unsung heroes of art, right? It's games are
that's why I always talk about don't do piracy, folks, because it's easy to look at the big stars and the people at the top think, man, they don't need it, but it's the folks below that might have an actual job, don't know about having a job from one gig to the next, are the ones you actually impact because they go first. The people at the top always stay at the top. That's why support the creators, folks. You know, that's the whole theme of this channel.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that people just don't think about. Like it's not just writing the game. Someone has to make the art for the game. And usually it's a whole team of artists that are making art for the game. And then somebody has to make it look good. They have to take the text and they have to take the art and then they have to put those things on the same page, right? Laying out tables, you know, the tables is often a nightmare in the layout process. And then you have printers and the freight and play testing. You know, we're really fortunate. We have such a cool community in our Discord server. So those play testers come in and they're always really excited. But like, we got to make sure they're in the book too, because like they're contributing like really valuable feedback. And it's just one of those things where the more you care about it, the more places you're going to find an opportunity for people to join in and help you, right? The more places you're going to find somebody has a specialized skill that you're okay at, but they're really good at. And so they come on board, you know, and it grows exponentially that way.
Do you think, because obviously you're all horror fans, you wouldn't be even remotely in this sort of zone if you weren't. But I've seen with different genres, definitely with the horror community, there's more of a vibe of that collaboration. That when something's horror based, more people that are, and either people are completely repulsed, don't want to know. But those that get it are like, oh, how can I get involved?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, I think a big part of that is like the stick together to survive mentality, right? Like we need to stick together to survive the horrors of the world. And then I think the other part of it is just like shared niche interests, right? There's sort of this is a weird way to word it, but there's kind of an us versus them mentality for people that like horror versus people that don't engage with horror at all. And so the people like horror tend to stick together for that reason, I think.
Yeah, and it's always I've done a few topics, you know, about censorship of horror, and I've another one planned for next month. And it's that whole thing that those that get horror get it, but those on the outside are like, ugh, and then want it to go away. It's something we embrace the uncomfortable feeling where people outside it like don't.
Yeah.
There's one from Brotherhood of the Dice. So will the game kind of be self-contained, like the Yellow King by Pelgrim?
Self-contained in as much as the way it's played, absolutely. It's very expanded in terms of what it is, right? Because of course, Reed with Fable Factory has made an entire soundtrack, and we have a novel, and we have the ARG that Snails built, which is fantastic. We have collaborative fiction on the Reddit, so it's big, it's expansive. There are a lot of ways to engage with it, but the system itself and the story that we're telling all kind of is tied into this one particular book. So if you want to play like the quintessential Cthulhu Dreamt experience, this book has all of the necessary elements that you would need. There are lots of ways to add to it. There are lots of ways to experience it in a bigger scheme as well. The system that we're building on, this D12 system, we're planning on using it for other things as well. So like you can get more out of it than just the Cthulhu Dreamt core experience. But if you just want kind of the straightforward thing, the book has everything you need.
Mm-hmm. So, like most things, you have the core set. That's it. You're good. It's not like any hobby. You can either stop there, or you can just keep going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'll let Reed talk about just a plethora of some of the stuff that we've got for that, because it's very cool.
Yeah, like and you know, going to just having the core book, like that is absolutely doable for anybody who, you know, wants to just have that and like stop there, because the way that we've thought about the game as like a project that is self-contained, you know, Jaren mentioned the Reddit. Well, the Reddit is actually going to be used to engage players as, you know, like a session 0, and then can, you know, they can keep going back to the Reddit as they, you know, develop, or they can keep a diary on the Reddit, or, you know, like there's many different ways to engage that particular aspect into the game. One of the things that I'm working on for the project is the soundtrack, which is all completely original music, you know, in various genres of metal and orchestral and like ambient.
That was something I was going to ask about that, because that's a bit of a unique aspect of this, because I don't think I've heard of any other games that have actually got the soundtrack with it.
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
There's usually a lot of stock footage, or people have, you know, generic sort of horror music, but they actually have the soundtrack to go with this particular game. That's a bit of it. What kind of made you? Was this just an idea of a hook, or just something that felt natural?
Well, I mean, like when I've played historically with friends TTRPGs, like I am the person who loves to like create my playlist of music and like, you know, have that go on during our sessions of playing, because for me it just makes it a more fun experience. And because like Cthulhu Dreamt started as, you know, a musical project, and you know, when Jaren and I kind of got into initial discussions about some other stuff, and we came kind of around to Cthulhu Dreamt, and Jaren was like, you know, have you ever thought of making this as a game? And you know, immediately I was like, well, that is awesome, let's do that. So
what was it, the lyrics you were creating for the songs?
I mean, the music and the lyrics, and like
that was sort of make you think, this could be a game.
I think it's more like, well, I think that's part of it, yeah, because it's all built on just the underlying story, which you know, that's like the story from the first album that Cthulhu Dreamt released.
How many? I was actually going to ask her before this game, how many albums has Cthulhu Dreamt put out there?
So we've got 2 albums and an EP, like, and each album is part of the story. Like it exists.
Are the concept albums?
Yeah. Yep. So like the first album takes place when the scientist, you know, who is trying to get their lost child, creates this portal to, you know, alternate universe, and inadvertently brings Cthulhu to our world. And the second album, like, which takes place during this period where Cthulhu is still sleeping, but in our world, and you know, is creating really bad effects on our world. You know, the weather is kind of descending into, well, I mean, not unlike, you know, our real world now. But like people's attitudes are shifting and getting worse, and like, you know, all of these things are compounding, and like the EP kind of is those final days right as we get into the game where Cthulhu wakes up. And that's where like the game and like the soundtrack go from there.
All right, cool. Yeah, because when you're writing anything, you build up a universe, and obviously it depends what some songwriters are more about personal encounters and they keep the songs in that, but others are storytellers. You might have noticed I'm a bit of a massive Iron Maiden fan, and I love their storytelling aspect of stories. Cradle felt the same, they took the old like a lot of old tales and they've brought them into song, and you kind of go along once you understand what's happening. Then you get invested in the stories, and then that's when you start reading. Actually, I think metalheads read more than others because of the songs.
Could be.
But if you think about most, even Metallica, I mean, and they're the most generic of days, but
yeah,
a lot of our songs like One, Johnny Got His Gun, Dalton Trimble, you wouldn't have thought to read that book, but by hearing the song, getting emotionally involved. So I would say the creativity, God, I can really speak, isn't wasted, and one can lead into the other. It's amazing where inspiration comes from.
Yeah, and getting back to the soundtrack, like I don't even know where to begin. Like, it's been such a huge kind of undertaking, and like luckily we've had lots of time leading up to now where I've been working on it, and I mean, we've got over 3 hours of music so far, and I haven't even started the ambient music.
So that's one game, right? Okay, so that's music for one game, right? Okay.
Yeah,
you see the rabbit hole you've actually dug for yourself.
I like being in the ground.
Hang on, this. Sorry, chat. We're nerding out here. You know how it is. I've even my notes have went to the side now because we're just getting into this, and that's what it's all about. Similar to the idea used in what was it a while ago? Forbidden Lands, One Ring, etc. So is it the gameplay sort of similar to that?
I have played neither Forbidden Lands nor the One Ring, so I'm not sure how similar in practice they are. If they're very narrative-driven games, where it's sort of like that conversational thing, absolutely. If it's a lot of like free form thought, absolutely.
If you're looking for a system to compare it to, Monk Cook's Cipher system and has a lot of similarities to what we're doing with Cthulhu Dreamt. So if you look at like Numenera, it would play somewhat similar to something like that.
All right, cool. Trying to think. Yeah, I think that's when we were talking about the campsite there. I think accidentally tripping on the wrong stream could be really bad. Yeah. Somebody actually asked that because that's the joke Brotherhood was making. My character was a junkie, so obviously did the usual what junkies do and then had to roll on the table to what happened. Do you have things that got built in, or is that up to the facilitator to?
No, we do. We deal a lot with. I mean, obviously, a big part of Cthulhu is like mind bending stuff. Snails has designed some creatures that are very like perception bending. Snails, actually, if you want to talk about some of the ways that like that perception bending sort of thing happens.
Yeah, I mean, without giving too much away, we have a creature that I'm really looking forward to getting into. That we refer to it right now as the Forget Me Not, because when you look at it, you see it, but as soon as you look away, you've forgotten completely that it exists. Similar to
what that's similar to
like the silence in Doctor Who, I think is a good analogy.
Yeah, but they were based on a mythical creature defense mechanism. Oh god, I've forgotten now.
So that one,
Doctor Who, obviously, but they were actually based on something else. That's the creature I'm trying to think of.
Oh, I'll have to look into it.
Yeah.
But that particular creature I'm looking forward to doing, because there's a lot that you can do with the as a facilitator with your players to kind of mess with them a little bit. So things like leaving notes that you don't for your players.
It was right here.
It was exactly. I think that's the big one that bends perception. Was there one you were thinking of in specific, Jared?
The parasites are the ones that I was thinking of.
Oh yes, the parasites.
They're so cool. I like this a lot.
We have a creature called a parasite, which is a giant flying creature that has no eyes. But the only way that you can actually see the creature is by closing your eyes, like where it is properly, because it distorts where it sits in space. And when you close your eyes, you still see it, but you see where it actually sits in space. And one of the fun kind of game mechanics that we're working on for that one is having the players, in order to like lower the target number to like engage this creature in combat, actually having to physically close their eyes before they roll the dice and rely on other people at the table to like tell them what they rolled.
All right, God. There was this old game. It was a kids' TV show. It was a new kid. I don't know if you heard of it, called Nightmare. Knight.
Oh, that does sound familiar, actually.
Right. So basically, the premise was the player was put into the dungeon. That was even before CGI. So how they did this was just brilliant. It was in the 80s, but you had the one player, and they were there with a helmet over their head, so that basically they could not see anything around them. And then you had the rest of another 3 players in the quest room, and they were communicating with the player, step left, step right. And they'd have to avoid traps. And then there's NPCs there as well, actors, I think that game ran for a couple of years, game show, but I think only 2 people ever got to the end of it.
Wow.
It was that brutal. I mean, like for a kids' TV show, it was unforgiving. I think a bunch of YouTubers tried to play it, and they brought back the guy who played, the Games Master for like a one-off, and they lasted about. I think they were planning for an entire episode, lasted 3 minutes. That was it, game over.
I'm gonna look this up as soon as we're finished.
Oh, it was brilliant. I'm just thinking out there. I was sort of thing got me into fantasy and into this sort of world. Those games I got them, they're like one-offs. You wouldn't get them now. There's another question from Adam. Cool. I'll be on his channel tonight playing Dragonlance.
Oh, nice.
Love that. So, how do you adjust the score with slow gameplay? I take it he's referring to the music.
Yeah.
Do you anticipate it or let the GM deal with it?
So like getting back to having just the core book as like the only thing, if that's the only thing you have, throughout the book, where I've composed the music for the story, we'll have QR codes that are sprinkled throughout to let the facilitator know, like, this is kind of what we have planned for this, so feel free to play it. And the music that I've written and am writing will be run the spectrum of style, but mostly for the longer play stuff, with slow gameplay or whatever, there will be a lot of like ambient music that brings back like the melodies or themes of whatever song is associated with that part of the story, so that it won't be obtrusive. It won't be like the headbanging metal song, that's going to be
because that's everyone's like trying to set up campsite, and then you're getting.
That's not how you set up your camp. Wow.
Yeah, but then that's why the tent ends up like all over the stuff, like sticks of wood and stuff, because like mosh pit. Oh, we've not got campfire again. Damn it!
Yeah,
when am I going to learn?
And to Adam, or anybody else watching or listening, any backer of the Kickstarter right now gets access immediately to our spin-off encounter called Springfield Nocturne, which is which has it built out like the game will be built out. I mean, there are QR codes throughout that encounter so that you can get a taste of like not only the gameplay and the world of Cthulhu Dreamt, but kind of how it'll function and play through.
Yeah, and also to Adam's point, the question being, do you anticipate it? Absolutely. Every song that gets produced for the game is designed in concert with the writing. So, we sit down to write an adventure or a scene, and we write it out, and then I go to Reed and I say, hey, Reed, here's the scene, right? Here's what's supposed to happen. Here's how we want the players to feel. Here's some of the sounds that you'll hear in the environment. Like if they're in the wilderness, they're going to hear these kinds of animals. Here's what those animals sound like. And then we'll kind of start to build that together to say like, okay, well, Reed will send us like a 3-minute clip of like, here's what I'm thinking, like, here's a work in progress. So it's very like they're designed one-to-one, hand in hand.
Is that maybe a preconception as well of death metal? People think all death metal songs have to be like supercharged, and that's that's that entire subgenre of metal where I'll use Cradle of Filth because, like I say, I'm a Cradle of Filth fan.
Sure.
where you have orchestral pieces, you have slower pieces, then you have the usual bonkers metal where you jump about the mosh pit, and when you're hitting 50, you're like hurts.
Well,
hurts a bit more than my 20s, my 30s, but
well, and like for Cthulhu Dreamt music, you know, anybody who goes back and listens to any of the music that's out there, like if you listen from to any of the stuff that we've got out there from beginning to finish of like the first album or the second album, you know, when we were writing it, like I knew that it was for this world. So, you know, I took a lot of liberties and mixed genre metals with everything else, you know, and so there's no compunction for me to stay within any particular genre. Like, yes, there will be metal, but there will also be like pure orchestral. There's also going to be like very quiet and subdued ambient stuff, you know, and like when the intro to your show started, like I was just like jamming out because you've got kind of like a trap beat mixed in there with your intro music.
And
like that, and that exists like within Cthulhu Dreamt's music too. Like there are some trap songs, you know, that are part of the sound.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm one of the MFL studio nerds. I'm like, I'm a DJ. I'm a DJ. Anything more than 40 seconds on the beat. What I'll do, obviously, before we started this conversation, because obviously I was talking to someone else when we set this up, I'll get the links because we've got about 3 different. We've got obviously in the description, we've got the link to the Kickstarter program, your main website, but there's about 3 or 4 different projects melded together here. So at the end, I'll get all the links. I'll put it in the pinned comment so everyone can go and check out the various elements, because it's actually quite interesting to see how collaborative this is. And it's not just the one, you know, oh, this is all we do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, I take it you have some stuff out there, Reed, yeah?
Yeah, I'm just I'm actually going to throw a link in the chat here to the preview EP that is on Bandcamp.
Oh, cool. Right.
Which has got like a selection of 7 tracks from the 3 hours of music that is written so far.
Fantastic. There you go. Actually, Sales, what started with you, we're going to get you to talk a bit more about collaborative fiction, then we kind of went off on a tangent. Do you want to, would this be a good time to go in and talk about collaborative fiction, what that's about and how it kind of came involved?
I think that's actually a better question for Jared, since he's the one that's most involved with like the Reddit and the various bits of collaborative fiction that are happening.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about it.
Yeah. So who owns what? These are all Cthulhu Dreamt, the band is Reed.
Yep.
Cthulhu Dreamt,
the game is us.
Is
me and Snails.
All 3, you and Snails, right?
Yep.
So we're getting like a bit of a Venn diagram here happening, right?
Yeah. And then there's people that are part of the team that aren't even on this interview that, you know, we just didn't have the screen space.
Just end up having about 3 windows and multiple streams happening.
Right.
Obviously, nobody forgetting. Once you check out the links, folks, you'll get to know everybody. So that's the main thing. And then collaborative fiction, where does that fit in?
It's sort of owned by everyone. It was
what is collaborative fiction? That would be the easiest one to start off with.
Yeah, we'll start there. So in the horror genre specifically, the example of collaborative fiction I think most people are familiar with within this subgenre is the SCP Foundation. For those who don't know what it is, it's this wiki. It's like Wikipedia, but it's a fictional wiki that documents these very strange creatures and places and entities. It's very X-Files in nature, but it's structured like it's declassified government files. The cool thing about it being a wiki is that anybody can jump in and create a new creature, a new place, and then tie it to everything else. So there is no one author. And that's probably why we're having a hard time figuring out how to answer this question. There is no one author of the collaborative fiction. There's no real one lore director. It's just a huge group of people coming together and sharing their ideas and building their own little stories. And then the canonicity of those events evolves over time. So the collaborative fiction that we have so far lives mostly on the Reddit and the ARG that Snails built, where these are stories that take place completely outside the context of the game, completely outside the context of the novel. And it's just like, here's a small story that you can kind of get a feel for what's happening in the rest of the world. One of our games writers, his name is Jahan, he wrote this really cool fiction piece on the Reddit it's a short story, right? It's a couple paragraphs long, but it's this story about this guy in the Middle East who when Cthulhu wakes up and starts to have this weird effect on the world, this guy happens to be on this hiking trip. So this post is written first person perspective, as if this guy that's on the hiking trip has come to this Reddit and been like, yo, I saw this very weird thing and I want to talk to other people about it. And that's how our collaborative fiction manifests, is anybody can show up to this Reddit and then they write just a first person view of like an imaginary weird thing that they're seeing. It lets them inject kind of their own local culture to it as well. So, I live in Columbus, Ohio. I could write about seeing like the art museum has this weird thing happening at it, right? Let me tell you about my trip to this art museum. So I get to share, like, I put my own personal spin on it, but then also tie it in with all of these other events. If somebody else creates a creature, I'll take that creature and have them show up in my story, right? And it grows and evolves over time in a way that's very cool.
Right. I suppose I hadn't actually thought, I didn't want to touch this subject, but in terms of OGL licensing and that, how is that going to work? Because that's been a bit of a sore point with other systems.
Sure has, yeah.
But it's also been like ring-a-ding-ding for competitors going, well, we don't do that. So how are you going to approach that in terms of people can collaborate? They don't feel like you're taking their work to make a profit off it, but also giving them the freedom that they're not taking your work either to create their own thing. How have you thought about the mechanics of that? And explain that to folks.
Well, like you said, ring-a-ding-ding, we don't do that here, right? So our take is a little different. After seeing the debacle with OGL, that was one of the big reasons we wanted to move away from 5th edition. It just felt less safe and like it got away from the indie-ness of the space. So we haven't yet ironed out the actual legalese of how we're going to execute this, but the intent, our full plan is to not just take Cthulhu Dreamt and open it up so that other people can write content for Cthulhu Dreamt and publish it, but also the underlying D12 system. When it was designed, because the mechanics were designed way before Cthulhu Dreamt was even an idea for action fiction, it was designed to be genre agnostic. You can take this D12 system that we've created and run a fantasy game, or a cyberpunk game, or a vampire game. You can do anything with it. And we don't just want to open up Cthulhu Dreamt as a setting with this system. We want to open up that system as well and publish it as a standalone system, like Powered by the Apocalypse is, right? Where it's just anyone can use it.
Did it as well. They produced them. That seems to be a bit of a trend that now people are just creating, here's a role-playing system. You do whatever you want, all content's then homebrewed.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly what we want. So we want both to be available to people. If you want to write specifically Cthulhu Dreamt stuff, you just really like that world, we want you to be able to do that. We also want you to be able to take that system and then run with it. Tell a Star Trek story, whatever you want to do. It's open.
Some games are good, but then you find the mechanics are cumbersome. And even swapping some bits, like always when it comes down to combat, that's usually where you find out if a game's good or bad. But when you have to sit and scratch your head for 10 minutes over a rule, that's when you just come straight out of the game. But sometimes the whole game setting can be fantastic, but the rules don't help you. And maybe using a different playing system can reinvigorate that game, the characters, the settings, and them make it enjoyable just by changing the rule sets, and also down to, I suppose, different people.
There are
I
a lot
like
of
the
people
B100 system because it's nice and simple, right? You got this number, get below it, you're good.
Yep.
That's, I'm a simple creature. Okay, here's that number, get above it.
Yeah. A lot of people don't like those, here are 2 300-page textbooks. This is how you play the game.
And here's just 20 rollable tables. You have and you're like going, okay, so it's raining and the slight breeze going from southwest to right. And we've just encountered this creature, so I have to go to table 5 across down. Okay, roll this, and then I only put the brown jacket on today, so then I'm at 2, and then 10 minutes later, clunk. Oh, right, I failed, so now I have to go to table. But
and that expresses itself too in Cthulhu Dreamt, where we use like compared to other systems, we use so many of these breakout boxes, our boxes where you're reading the adventure, and then there's a box that's separate from everything else where it's us and we're talking directly to the facilitator, like one-on-one. So we have tons of these where the box pops up and it says, hey, just so you know, here's the design intent of this scene. Here's what we want players to feel. So like, don't even get bogged down with the rules. Like we're giving you kind of the core advice of like what we think this scene should do, and then you can take that and run with it. We do that a lot. We try to level set it and make it as easy as possible for a facilitator to run the game. And we have seen a lot of really positive feedback about the way that is executed.
That's good, because there's nothing worse than a rules lawyer in a game.
Yeah, agreed.
You know, and
it's
that
tough.
guy, we've all played with that guy.
Yep.
And just completely takes it. I must win at all costs. And then all of a sudden, you just sorry, I'm just bad memories.
I was going to say, it seems like you're reliving something right now.
Yeah, I'm like, sorry, I'm just having a bit of PTSD. Oh man, sorry, just the vampire again. I'll bring that up. That was the worst game for that. God, oh my word, that some of the people you encountered are hardcore vampire players, and you just can't. No fun. And even if you don't play that, sorry, we're gonna play this game. What do you mean you're not including me? And you're like, you just can't win. Anyway, back to this, the more positive things. This is obviously being sold as a physical book, which everyone collects, we know it, but the reality is most people now play online.
Mm-hmm.
So how have you built in, because one thing I found really disappointing is you buy a rule set, there's another game system I bought, horror-based, and they've completely changed the dice system and that, but just trying to find a module in either Roll20 or Foundry, for example, is impossible because they've changed everything, and they're usually fine. They've produced a nice book, it's wonderful, but you go to do it online and you've no chance to, unless you're going to completely redesign it yourself, you can't play it. Mm-hmm. Have you thought about this and looked towards building modules for these sort of platforms so that people can have the online option as well?
It's something that we're looking into. And in the meantime, what we've done as a kind of a stopgap measure is, because so many people play digitally, right? Especially since the pandemic, we wanted to make it as simple and straightforward as possible to run, whether you're in Roll20 or just on Discord with your friends. Mm-hmm. So our character sheet is designed. It's a form fillable PDF, but it's not just like a PDF with some boxes. It's like, there are places for you to scribble in, and we're trying to create a PDF where you can add an image to it to have your character appearance and make it automatically smartly calculate your carrying capacity and intelligently calculate everything that we want to build. We want it to try and have that math and functionality be built into the PDF so that you don't even really need a full external Roll20 system. You could use it and it would be very cool, but you have all the automation in the PDF itself. The music can be played in Discord. Discord has lots of bots that you can use to play music for everyone. And we're play testing with a lot of stuff like that. Just a lot of systems where we want it to be as broadly as accessible as possible. So you don't need to spend an extra $40 on Roll20 assets if you don't want to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because that's frustrating. I go in, first of all, you go to create, like I said, if it's a completely different system, you go to start a new game in there's Roll20 and ask you what system you're using. If it's not on there, you just get a generic character sheet which doesn't fit.
Right.
And then you're like, and then, oh God, and then, this one had a couple of YouTube videos on how to create the macros and stuff, but it still doesn't, that becomes work.
Yeah.
And for someone like me, I'm a bit of a numpty. I need things simply explained to me at first so I can just do it. Plus, I don't have time because this channel takes up a lot of my life as well as a full-time job. So I don't have time to sit and study just to play a game. And then I get frustrated because I just want to play a simple game to start off and then get the feelers for it. And then if I feel like it's just becoming too much like work, I'm out. Foundry's a lot better in terms of their character sheets are amazing, but just from scratch, you're a bit like, oh God, this is complicated. And once again, somebody put up a module and it didn't work. So once something doesn't work, I'm like, oh God, this is now hard. I don't want to do it. And then it gets put to the side. So how are you planning to, because obviously by the time the game releases, if there's too much of a delay between that and say a simple module being available, that might put people off.
Yeah, the question of whether or not we get to make a module is definitely going to be whether or not there's good demand for it, right? Because we looked into making these modules for our Merca books, and making those really nice modules is like somebody's full-time job. It can be expensive, and so it's one of those things where like we're an indie outfit. I have a day job. Like everyone on the team, like action fiction's not the only thing that we do, so we kind of have to pick and choose. Where are we going to
appreciate that as well? I think that's one thing that this isn't all our full-time jobs. You know, this is these are hobbies, these are passion projects.
Yeah,
we do this after a full day's work where we're knackered, and you have to like find that energy, and that's where you know you're investing in something because you got to do it. But yeah, sorry, I forgot where I was going with this. But yeah, that's something people have to consider. That this isn't a full-time thing, and you're doing it for the love. Yeah, obviously, if it builds, that would be the dream to do the thing that you love and be able to live with it. But that's not always a reality.
Right. Yeah. And so, like, I would love to make a full playable Roll20 module with dynamic lighting. I would love to do an animated Netflix original series. I would love to do a 12-hour documentary on the making of. And whether or not we get to do any of that is always just dependent on like whether or not we can get the support to do it. So right now, in terms of Roll20 modules, we're just sniffing out to see what support there is. Who wants the Roll20 modules? Sounds like you do, for sure, right? But who else out there likes those Roll20 modules?
Well,
and is it something you want to invest in?
Just for me, even it's just the mechanics of bring a few people online. Well, if we can arrange maybe a play test on the channel and then see how, like, particular streamers, how that fits in with this. That'd be a good, that'd be a good mechanic.
Yeah, good demonstration.
Yeah, just okay. This is all you need, folks. Because also, not everyone plays. Like I'm sitting here, I'm a nerd, loads of screens. Not everybody has that. Some people are just playing on a phone or a laptop. So how do you make it accessible so somebody can play?
Right.
They have to have tons of kit after as well buying the physical copy. So if we can show that, then I think that'll showing's worth a, picture speaks 1,000 words, as they say. Showing rather than just telling.
Yeah.
People invested in your project.
Absolutely. Yeah, we could definitely talk about that. I'd love to have that.
Yeah, fantastic. Another thing is, obviously, this is on crowdfunding project. Now, people have preconceptions about crowdfunding. Think it's a scam. They think the thing's never going to happen. You've got all that to fight against. How do you explain? How do you get people to get over that, so to speak, or understand that you're the genuine, you're the real deal, and then support your projects? Because I think that's one of the barriers with crowdfunding, and then see the target amount as well, and then they think, well, if I invest in that and it doesn't reach the target amount, that's it. I've wasted money.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain?
Great question.
Your perspective.
So the nice thing is that this is not our first rodeo, right? Snails was a project lead on one of our books, right? We've made 3 books through crowdfunding already, 3 games. So we know what we're doing. You can go and get those books. So you can see what our finished products look like, right? We've got years of experience now to help earn that trust. And Reed is in the same boat, right? You can see Cthulhu Dreamt music, and also like Reed isn't tooting his own horn, but he does music outside of Cthulhu Dreamt too. He does every genre of music. He's got a band for it. This man never stops making. But the nice thing is that, for folks that are curious about the crowdfunding, they say, well, how do I know I can trust you? We can point to 1,000 pages of content that we have produced and printed in hardback and show them like, here's the quality of our work. Here's the print quality. You can see it. Just as same as people can go and see Reed's entire back catalog of all of the albums. I've got 2 of Reed's CDs like on my desk where I can show like this CD is a real thing. It's very cool. If you want to go hear the music, it's on Bandcamp for like listen, like they can check it out before they spend money on it. And we already hit our funding goal, so we already know it's going to happen. There is no risk. There is no is this going to fund? It's just a matter of waiting and creating now, which is
because obviously I've backed a few projects, but it's something I've asked people to explain. It's more to get over that bar because people still have this stigma.
Yeah,
it's very true.
The crowdfunding, which that's what we're here to talk about. That's why we get online and we'll have the conversations. But the thing with games, because that's something I've started looking into recently. But it seems to be that the game gets crowdfunded and then disappears.
Video games are really
I've been told
bad
by a
about
few
that,
folks that that's it. The game's just crowdfunded, and once that's produced, end of story. Which I think is a bit of a shame, because say the thing's coming to the end of the bad part, you only find out about it at a bad part of the month. And you've got reality and bills, so you've got to wait. Then it's gone, you miss out. And it doesn't seem to become available again. But you guys, are here for the long haul, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing it for 5 years already on the game side for action fiction, and Reed's been making music for eons. So we're here to make the game. There's going to be stuff that's Cthulhu or that's Kickstarter exclusive, right?
Yeah, because that's the whole point of the perks, isn't it?
That's the nature of the beast. But in terms of the game, I mean, yeah, we want to, as soon as the Kickstarter ends, we're going to have late pledges for people that missed the Kickstarter and still want to get in at that last minute. We're going to go to conventions to sell the game as well. And you won't be able to get like some of the nicer stuff for sure, but like that game is going to have ongoing support. And if we see a lot of folks are hungry for more Cthulhu Dreamt content, then we're leaving ourselves room to come back to this and to make a second book, a follow-up game, all kinds of stuff like that.
All right, fantastic. That's good. Like I said, it's just that the fact you're even online speaking, that I think that speaks volumes. There's so many people out there that you never see or hear from.
Right.
And then people are like, okay, what are they about?
Yeah, they're hiding behind like their Kickstarter page. Oh, trust us. It's fine.
Well, like
there's a lot of bad faith actors out there, which is why it's important, I think, that you step up, you speak, and that gives you advantage straight away over others that don't.
Right.
And it helps remove the bad faith actors, because if you're not prepared to do that, then what are you hiding, sort of thing. On that, actually, because that's obviously we talk to a lot of indie creators, and it's all about promoting indie content. How much of a struggle is it, the promotion aspect? Because
it's the worst. it's the worst part of the whole thing.
It is definitely the worst part of the entire process. Like I can't tell you how many like long meetings we've had where we've talked about like ads, just talking about like, is this ad more effective, looking at numbers and statistics on like, well, this ad is performing better than this ad, why is that? It is definitely the worst part.
Yep. Yeah, it's one of those things where the hard part about being in an indie space, particularly in indie games, is that in order to make the game, you have to wear all of the hats. It's not enough that we sit here and design this really cool new game system, and then we create such amazing art for it with all of our incredible artists, and then Reed makes hours and hours of incredible music. Then we have to go up on stage and dance about it for months on end to convince people that what we did was cool. And that can be very exhausting. I think some people gravitate towards it. Some people love to get on stage and talk about it. But speaking at least for myself, and I know a couple other members of the Cthulhu Dreamt team, like there are a lot of us that would be much happier to just like sit behind the screen and make the content and then just ship that content out into the world and have people like it.
But that's not reality, is it?
I wish that worked.
I champion other people. That's where I'm most comfortable. But if I'm sitting going, that's the best podcast ever. Oh, whoopie doopie doo. Get buy my stuff too. I am woeful at it. And I've been creating ads. I'm like, oh god, that's cheesy as hell. I hate myself.
Yep.
I don't want to be that person. The one that's always, like you said, that love that's about, and they're every conversation about them, and you're like, oh, you're exhausted.
Yeah. You have to split the difference. You have to find a way to get your stuff in front of people, but not hate yourself when you're done doing that, right? And that is it's a narrow line that not just the three of us, but everybody else on the Cthulhu Dreamt and Action.
Everyone I've spoken to, and myself included, we're all the same mind. It's horrible, but the reason why we talk about it is it's got to be done. You can't get away from it. Yeah, and it's something, if you're a creator, you have to be prepared for.
Yeah, that's true.
But I think, like, you guys coming on having the conversation, absolutely fantastic. That's a way to deal with it, just being overboard, and look, ad.
Yeah, no, it's great to be able to like come on and talk with you, Colin, about it, because I don't know how or why, but like for me, I got the de facto social media position to do like Cthulhu Dreamt stuff. So it's like, oh yeah, like how do I do, and then it's like trying to come up with all the assets. And luckily we've got a great team of folks who can, whip up a cool graphic quick or whatever, and come up with something to post. But it's like, yeah, it's tons of work, and it's hard not to cringe when you're like self-promoting so constantly. But it's super fun to talk about it when we're just doing like organic conversations about it like this. And yeah, we're speaking for myself and the team, I think we're very, very, very proud of this thing that we've created.
Yeah, no, that's the secret too. Is the secret is sharing the burden, right? Like none of us wanted to do the social media, and Reed fell on that particular landmine. But because he was able to do that, I have been running all over trying to get folks to do actual plays and live streams of the game and stuff like that. And knowing that like Reed is off doing that promotion stuff, and I'm like, well, I hate that, but he's doing it, so I can hate myself over here and do this part of it, and no one person is shouldered with like the immense burden of like, because just I think it takes a very special kind of person, and like that, I'm not knocking those people that can be like community managers and social media employees, but like, man, that's not for me. I don't think it's for Reed either. He's great at it, but I can tell he hates it. Like it's just like the necessary evil of our world. It's the Cthulhu of Cthulhu Dreamt.
Yeah, and that kind of leads nice little segue into the question we always ask here. How has social media helped or hindered your projects? Because it's a strange world. It's fantastic in a lot of aspects. The fact we can do this, so we can reach each other, but also,
I mean, well, like I'll be the first to throw shade at social media, but at the same time, social media is how I found Jaren and eventually met Snails, and like so many of the friends that I have now, and like the creative people that I work with, like I have social media to thank for that. Like Twitter is how I met Jaren, because he was self-promoting Monsters of America, the first Kickstarter campaign, and I was like, oh hey, do you actually need any music for your Kickstarter video? And like that was how we met, and we've become such good friends and have worked on so many different things together now, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. And having done the social media stuff for like the Cthulhu Dreamt campaign now for like the last 3 or 4 months here, what like the thing that I love about it is actually getting people who respond to what we're posting and getting to like go have back and forths with them and learn about the people who actually are into the stuff that we make. And like that's while I will like throw shade at the social media, like that's what makes it worth it in the end.
I totally agree. The Discord community that we've built of people that like, where you start to bridge the gap between like fan and friend. There's kind of like a middle ground there where like we have this huge community of folks that are in our Discord that we engage with like directly, like we're talking to them, we're sharing ideas and stuff, and it's very cool to like thin the wall that separates creators and their fans, right?
I'm still figuring Discord out.
Yeah.
Thing annoys me though about it is if you're a member of multiple groups or multiple channels and you leave that thing open, bing, 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 bing. It's like, bloody hell, calm down.
Yeah. Figuring out the notifications system in Discord and how to like get the notifications set up so that you're happy with them. That's the first rule of Discord is like, how do I not drive myself nuts with all of the pings and notifications? Our Discord server has like almost like 2,000 people in it. So if you don't have the notification set right, like you could go absolutely nuts.
Like my phone, I couldn't have Discord on my phone because my phone would getting launched. Because even like Facebook and stuff, I have all them off because I cannot. My phone buzzing for no reason. That drives me crazy.
Yeah.
Adam commented here that if we have found a specific social network that responds more, part of our campaign for this project was to buy and run ads. So we've been doing that in conjunction with actually posting stuff on the Cthulhu Dreamt page, and all of that stuff. But we've only done that on like the meta networks, Facebook and Instagram. So it's actually, like everybody loves to hate on Twitter, which I will also, but we posted there as well. And it feels like the engagement on Twitter, if somebody sees your stuff in comments, is it's a lot easier to just quickly go back and forth, because usually if that happens, you're kind of on there at the same time. But like Facebook, it feels like there's a little bit more interaction. However, being also a Facebook user, it's so much harder to see stuff because of like all of the ads, and we're guilty of it too, because we buy them. But
and of course Facebook broke at the start of the stream. Don't know it was like something started. It has fits down again. It's like, oh, I'm going to break. We're not. Sorry, Facebook folks. We're obviously rewatching this back.
Yeah,
it broke. Can't do anything about it.
Adam had another question.
Yeah, I was actually going to get that one once I got that thing, but yeah, we did cover this at the start.
You'll just have to rewatch, Adam. Sorry.
You did. I'll address just really quick. One of the things, which is like, what is the draw of the system itself? Why this system? And it's because like a big part of horror, a big part of the reason that horror ever lands for anybody is feeling not safe. And so many systems are designed to make you feel powerful. So we had to design a system from scratch for us to get the exact right balance of not safe that we wanted for the story that we wanted to tell, right? There's a very particular kind of horror that we're cultivating with survival and with, like going up against eldritch entities and just trying not to die in the world. And there weren't really systems out there. We thought about a few, but we thought it's better to use this one because we can custom build it to exactly what we want. And that's ultimately why we decided to do that.
I suppose we haven't had the chance. We've just been going full nerd here for like an hour and a half, but
sure.
haven't got a chance to talk about horror itself. Like, what drew you into the horror genre? Obviously, because that tends to be the feeder, doesn't it, for these type of games? You become a horror fan first, and then you're like, oh, are there games I can play, or gaming tends to be second.
Yeah. I've been a fan of horror. I think all three of us probably have been a fan of horror for ages, since we were very, very young. I was 7 years old when I watched Stephen King's It for the first time. What a horrible thing to watch as a 7-year-old, but man, I was just like,
especially when that involves kids too. So
yeah,
so you're like, proper me. Kids, not these 30-year-old high school students, slasher kids, but actual proper kids.
Yeah. So like, it's one of those things where I watched it and I went, my God, that was terrifying. I want to do that again. I want to feel that again. I'm chasing that like adrenaline rush sort of feeling. And I think that's really what caused me to sink my teeth into horror all those years ago.
For me, I was probably about 7 or maybe a little bit younger. My mother showed me Creature from the Black Lagoon, which absolutely terrified me until she paused the movie and then pointed out where the zipper is on the suit. And then ever since then, I've been fascinated by horror and like what makes particular things scary and what is not scary. And so I love seeing like what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, and for me, like I'm a big reader. Like I love horror movies too, and like Jaren, the movie that I watched way too young was Predator, which I watched it in the summer of its release, and it messed me up pretty good. But
that came across initially as an action flick, didn't it?
Yeah.
You thought it was just going to be an Arnie Schwarzenegger action flick, and they did have that. They did have the unlimited, the non-empty magazines that just had a million rounds in it, and the belts that never ran out, and they could just go in the jungle with like a weapon and nothing else.
Yeah, and like the opening shot of that movie is Predator's craft coming onto Earth, and I was like, oh, that can happen, thinking as a 7-year-old, and it messed me up that summer pretty good, because if aliens can exist, then I'm not safe. But like on the reading side, like I love to read. There's only 2 books that have like made me feel actual fear, like where I've been kind of scared to walk through my own hallway in my house or wherever I was living. And one of them is Salem's Lot by Stephen King, and the other is At the Mountains of Madness, because like for whatever reason, like it just like the grittiness of it and the realism of that story is like I couldn't go to Antarctica to verify that the Mountains of Madness don't exist, like I don't know, I love it.
Yeah, no, that's a great pick. Some of the early stuff, the stuff that I'm taking into Cthulhu Dreamt really hard too is like some of the serial horror spooky stuff. So like I'm a big fan of Twilight Zone, big fan of Tales from the Crypt. Both of those are huge. X-Files as well, and that's starting to manifest in the way we're telling some of the side stories in Cthulhu Dreamt.
Such a shame the way X-Files went.
Yeah, I know. It's
that
so
was
good, and then it gets
brilliant.
So
when they did an episodal, and it was just encountering a new strange thing or a monster. But once it started getting into, here's a government agent set up to suppress this government agent, which is all I had to do is pull the funding, end of investigations. And then this Anthony's trying, and then it just got really stupid.
I think it's to taste, right? Like it's for some people, they really like the like government spookiness of it. And I mean, like, were it so easy to pull funding, right? To get everyone on the same page to pull funding. But a lot of the way that serial storytelling is manifested, specifically in Cthulhu Dreamt, is, we've got these side story encounters that we mentioned earlier, where it's just a one shot. It's perfect for if one of your players isn't there for your weekly game session, but you still want to play. So you can break out this side story one shot. You're still in the same world. You're still using the same system. And we get to do kind of like a monster of the week or like a horror thing of the week and tell these like nuanced, like morally gray, there is no happy ending kind of stories where like sometimes like the best case scenario is still not that great. And that I think really comes from like X-Files, Tales from the Crypt, Twilight Zone especially, where when you end a Twilight
season
Zone
4
episode,
show's coming up this October, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw the trailer. In fact, I think we're going to talk about it tomorrow.
Yeah. But you get to the end of some of those episodes and it's not all hunky-dory rainbow. It's not a happy ending. Sometimes it's very bad.
Yeah. One of the ones that freaked me out as a kid, the Twilight Zone, actually, was the spider one. Remember the two lads were going into their father's lab?
Yeah.
And they hadn't seen him in a while. And they're all, you started to see more and more. It started off with pigeons, and then cats, dogs, and then eventually it was people. And you kind of knew it was coming, but you didn't at the same time. Then eventually it was, you decided to breed something stupid, and
yeah,
and that two disappearing up. I was such a simple episode, but I remember as a kid just freaked me out. Going,
That manifests too in newer takes on that same formula. Like Black Mirror is a great example of that. Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities.
Oh my god, I did a review of that series. The autopsy one.
Yeah, that's hugely inspiring for Cthulhu Dreamt specifically. It was like everyone had to watch it for homework. We were like, you have to go watch this. We're not doing the meeting tonight. Meeting's canceled. Go watch this instead. It's very important.
God, what was that? The worst one was that futuristic one with what's his face? He played RoboCop.
Oh, Peter Weller?
Yeah. Peter Weller. Yeah, I one with Peter Weller, and it was, what the hell was that about? They're sitting at the table and flipping, passing drugs and try this, and then they went in, here's the spooky bit, 20 seconds. Yeah. What the hell was that?
Yeah. Like, stuff like that is so cool.
That's fun. I've mentioned like Del Toro and that. Tarantino put as one. Who's making a flipping Giallo? Who do you call him? Oh my god. Italian director Dario Argento has another movie coming out this year at 88 years of age.
Nice.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. That guy's no intention of stopping.
2022, David Cronenberg made his first film in a while, Crimes of the Future, which was bizarre, but really good. I loved Crimes of the Future.
Good as maybe a little.
I love that film. I will defend it to the day I die. It was weird, I loved it.
It was very Cronenbergian.
Hell yeah, it was. That's what I wanted.
Yeah. We were talking about as well, like Werewolf in London. The fact that they begrudgingly got an Oscar, and we got copyright claimed because we showed a clip.
Oh no!
They really went a 41-year-old clip, and they got annoyed about it.
Wow.
But how they begrudgingly gave the best makeup and effects the Werewolf in London, yet what they showed as comparison from the Normie universe was like, huh? What? It's not even close. I don't know. It's just there's a passion with horror that you don't get anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Would you agree that there is once you get the horror bug, once you get it and you're in, that's it. You can, and I believe you can stay there forever because there's so much of a wide scope.
Yeah. It's just
you can tell different
primal.
fields.
Yeah.
It's very primal too. Like the feeling, like fear is probably some of the first emotions that humanity ever felt because it's so tied to survival. So like it scratches that particular like animalistic part of our brain. It goes very, very deep.
Yeah.
Well, Poster, I'm doing something horrible tomorrow. I'm covering the remake of Slumber Party Massacre.
Oh wow!
Yes,
wow!
Some arsehole
what a day
remade
that
it.
will be.
Some arsehole remade it for modern audiences. And yes, it's bad as it sounds. No fun, no joy, nothing. Tomorrow's going to be a whinging session when we do our monthly roundup. Every month we have like a talk spot. Myself and my co-host, we like do a monthly roundup of news and stuff, and I'll have to do a movie. And yeah,
Colin, do you have like a favorite remake that of a horror film?
The Amityville Horror, actually.
Okay,
that's a good one.
Believe it or not, the only film that Ryan Johnson actually acted in, or not Ryan Johnson, Ryan Reynolds. Sorry.
Yeah,
because in every Ryan Reynolds film, he only plays himself.
Right.
Sure.
But in this one, he actually acted. And as much as the original was great, this didn't depart from the story.
Yeah.
And added to it. Just use modern effects and drama.
Yeah.
To bring it to life. So it's I would say that was the best one I've seen. A close second would be the It remake.
Okay.
But it still doesn't hold a candle to the original miniseries with Tim Curry.
Right. No,
but
I agree.
It didn't piss all over the original, if that makes sense. A lot of remakes like
that's where the bar
we're
is.
better than this trash, and then it makes something worse.
Yeah. No, I think honestly, for me, one of my favorites was the remake of The Thing. It sort of kicked off the reboot era of modern films. Was remaking The Thing, but I thought it was a prime target for remaking. Now that we had new effects, I don't think it's bad. I think it does things very differently than the original.
It's a prequel.
But,
yeah,
it is. You're right. It's
what annoyed me was
same story,
they originally shot it with practical effects, and then they took all that out in the editing and reshot with VSF, and you're like, what the hell?
Sure.
Right.
So I want to see the cut with the practical effects. I want to see it's called the Carpenter cut, the Carpenter-esque cut.
Oh, sure.
Yep.
I want to see that cut where they had the practical effects in.
Yeah, I would love that.
Another one, Suspiria. The Suspiria remake was pretty decent.
Okay, I haven't seen that one.
Oh, that's the scene in the studio with the girl, the traitor. Oh, that is one of the most brutal scenes I've seen in a while. It's not often. Like, I'm slightly tapped in the head. I've watched too many horror movies, so I'm like immune almost. And it's not often a scene in the horror movies go, oh. But that scene in the dance studio with the girls on her own and the witches are dealing with her.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'll have to add that to the list.
Brutal. Yeah. That's well worth the watch. And once again, they didn't take away from the original story. They just did their own twist on it, but you recognized it.
Yeah. That's nice.
And I'm not a fan of reboots or remakes. Tell new stories.
Yeah.
There's more than enough room. You guys have shown it as well. You have taken the aspects of Lovecraft, you've taken it, and already I can hear from your voices that you've made a new story, you're passionate, and you don't want to just retread old ground, because that would be an easy thing to do when it just retread and here's a new package over the same thing, ship it out. But hopefully as we see some play testing, we'll get to see how the new product works, and I'm really excited for it, actually.
Nice. Good.
But there you go, folks. I suppose last thing is, obviously this is under the horror label, and something I'm starting to talk about a lot, and we'll sort of wrap up with this before we talk about what's coming next. But the label horror, has that adversely affected you? Have you had your problems with like making posts the minute you put horror against it? You start getting trouble with social media, like Facebook's notorious for it, and Instagram. The minute you put horror, you're instantly almost shadow banned. You're at a disadvantage. All the warning labels and all that kind of stuff for people attacking you just because you made a horror game.
Oh God, did that happen, Reed?
I haven't seen it, although maybe I'm just shadow banned.
We just don't know about it. Yeah, no, I think so far we haven't had any adverse effects. It's sort of been the opposite. It's sort of more been like what you had said. Horror is such a unifying thing that folks that normally would never have, I think, looked into a TTRPG or looked into an album like Cthulhu Dreamt have bought into it because they're like, well, I do like horror, so let me check this out. And then we get a lot of folks that are ready, that they're willing to ask questions like, how is this horror? In what way is this horror different from horror that I'm used to? So I think for us, it's mostly been helpful.
Fantastic. That's good to hear positive stories as well. You know, it's but also people do encounter that. I think it seems to be more writers that the aim at. Writers seem to have a real hard time writing horror books. That's what they seem to like me attacking and getting taken off platforms and stuff. It's ridiculous. But you can always get through it. I think what you're busy trying to say is build a community.
Yeah.
And be in touch, be real with your fans, those that support you, be real and don't dismiss them.
Right.
Like a lot of other genres do, and look how they have turned out.
Yeah.
$320 million losses and stuff. And you're like, okay, right, you crack on.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Right. So most importantly, what's next down the pipeline then? Once this is out, this will be happening. This will be going live in October.
The
campaign finishes in September, is that right?
Yep. The campaign finishes in September, and then we're going to spend the rest of the year finishing out the book. The book and the album and all of the other Kickstarter fancy things are probably going to ship out sometime mid next year. So for the rest of the year, what we're going to be doing is just cranking out new content, sharing it with our community, soliciting ideas from them, right? And kind of like getting more into that collaborative fiction side of things, right? Once the Kickstarter is over, for us, that's sort of where we get to take off those marketing hats that we've been wearing for months on end and put our creative hats back on and say like, all right, now we get to do what we actually came here to do, which is very exciting. It's my favorite part.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, guys, I have to say, thank you very much for coming on. This has been fantastic. We got proper nerded out as well. And thanks to everyone in the chat. You know, you just made this more special, you know, because that's what it's all about, engagement and the random questions that I wouldn't always think about and getting involved. It seems really exciting. Honestly, I'm excited to see how this turns out.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having us, Colin. It's been a blast.
Again, but
totally.
Like I said, we'll get the rest of the links afterwards. If you email them, I'll put it in the pinned comment so people can check out the various projects, seeing how this is such a collaborative effort. But obviously, just want to wish you all the best and looking forward to this coming out and being a success and seeing how it plays out as a game will be wonderful.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, everyone else, you want to check me out in 2 hours' time. I'll be on Dragonlance Saga's channel playing Shadows of the Dragon Queen. Our next, we're in the middle of a dungeon crawl, and I can't see anything because the lights are out. So that'll be fun. I'm going around with no torch, going, oh, folks, where are you? While a major battle's taking place. So that's where we're picking up from. Tomorrow, obviously, we've got the Horrific Talk Spot. We're going to wide and moan as usual and do that god-awful remake. That's in my life. Plenty coming up as always. Keep up to date with the channel, do the typey clicky things, and until next time, keep it creepy, keep it horrific.